Sustainability Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Kyle Financial and Strathclyde House Buyers. Kyle Financial are proud supporters of local communities and specialise in helping you protect what matters most. For your family, your lifestyle and even your income, they have it covered. Kyle Financial are now offering free wills, regardless of whether or not you need any other service. Go check them out on the website www.kyle-financial.co.uk or check them out on Facebook, Twitter or even Instagram. Strathclyde House Buyers are a local property solutions company who specialise in helping people sell their property quickly with no fees. If you or anyone you know are looking for a fast, stress-free sale, check them out on the website www.strathclydehousebuyers.com, on Facebook or on Instagram. So, the Commonwealth champ.
How are we?
How does it feel to hear that? To be the champ there?
It feels amazing. Like, I've put so much hard work into it. I've been 10 years in boxing and now I'm actually finally starting to reap the rewards. It feels amazing.
Nathaniel Collins, by the way. I should have started off with that. And then
No, the Commonwealth champ sounds better. You can just keep it that. I might just change my name to that legally.
And you've got the nickname The Nightmare. Where did that come from?
So it's funny actually. We turned pro and I was like, right, what can I call myself? And I put out like just an Instagram poll. And it was just a young kid for one of the boxing clubs. And he's like, the Nightmare would be good. Because before I was like, I want to call myself like Notorious. But then I was like, I can't call myself Notorious. It's because Conor McGregor's got that. But it just rhymed. It was the only two end things I can come with. And then somebody said to me, get the Nightmare going. And my coach Joe was like, that would be good. You could get a mask and stuff. So that's how all that came about. And it was just kind of a selling point. And then it's actually turned into a bit more for me because when we're in the changing room and I've got my mask and then everything comes on, it's almost like a time to switch on. Like you're Nathaniel there, but pull that on and it's time to get to work.
It's like the Terminator.
Exactly.
That's exactly.
Ready to rock.
There's like definitely an intimidation factor about it. Like when I seen the pictures, I was like, I don't want to mess with that guy.
Aye, for sure. And I'm thinking like if you walked out into a ring and somebody came in with a mask, it's not a common thing. So even though it's there for it to be a scary factor, you're thinking, what the fuck's this guy all about? Like,
exactly.
He's coming in with this. He must be super confident because you wouldn't come in with that otherwise if you...
I know, well, that must come from just knowing that you've put in all the work though.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, I feel like a lot of what you see in boxing now, especially is a lot of young guys coming through that are just grafting, and you see like you and Regan, for example, like I just watch you guys and I'm thinking, I'm not doing enough here. Like, I need to be doing more.
It's good. It shows like me and Reagan, obviously you see, as we're working all the time. And again, I had my win through TKO last week. He had his win just there through TKO. So it just shows you put in the work, you'll get the results. Yeah,
because I think there's also this idea that you need to have a lot of money and you need to be putting in like thousands of pounds of money to make sure that you can get the best coaches and all that. But in a lot of ways, if you get the right team and it doesn't really matter as long as you're putting in and improving with the right group around you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can guarantee it's nothing to do with money because I'm skint. But no, you can put in the work anywhere you go. It showed through lockdown. Like I just built my own pull-up and dip station out the back through lockdown, and I was running pull-ups, dips, had resistance bands. So it's like, that showed me you don't need fancy stuff. You can make it happen with anything as long as you've got the right attitude and the right mindset. And I think that's something that shows in our team specifically because everybody's on that path of destruction, you know.
I mean, definitely. I have my barber, is you know him well. I can't pronounce his name to save my life, so I'm just going to call him D. But you know what?
You know
what I'm talking about. He was telling me stories about how you just went a random marathon run one day.
Yeah.
When like no food in it and you just done like a mad 40k or 50k or something like that.
It's funny because like Diaz was probably one of my best friends, and I think before he met me, he didn't really know what it was about, and one day he messaged and he was like, you want to do a bit of training and do a session? So I was doing a session with him and he was like, next few days he was blown out of the water. He was like, I'm burst. And then we started hanging about and he's just gradually getting to see how crazy it gets, because I will wake up and just get a notion for something one day, and that day it was a marathon, and then You know, there's been loads of stuff I've done, fitness challenges, anything that pops up, I'm like, I can smash that, let's get it. So,
Well, we have the same sort of mindset with that because I did something similar. Well, I did 1,000k in a month, so that was like 40k a day for 30 days.
yeah.
And seeing people like you, I was thinking to myself, I really should have prepared more for this. Like, there wasn't much in terms of preparation and all that. And now you mentioned if I was to walk out to a boxing ring, which I had to sidestep the wheelchair joke so badly that it's hard. I'm actually doing a charity boxing match with Enzo Machinelli.
Yeah, I remember you saying.
In September, that's actually going to happen now. And I have no idea what I'm going to do. I think I'm just going to get knocked out, to be honest.
I'm sure not. We'll get you for some pads before you go.
Man, I need it. I get 3-4 weeks and I'm just like, what have I, you know,
Signed up for you.
Exactly. Like, I can talk a really good game, and then sometimes you end up talking your way into a boxing match. You know what I mean?
We are good champions.
It's honestly, you couldn't make up some of the situations like that. But see, you were talking about your financial situation. I'm interested by this because UPT as well. I know UPT guys like James English and stuff.
Yeah.
Who I've slagged off countless times in this podcast, but we won't go into that. But like, see, actually, the amount of time that you put into training, do you not think it's mad that isn't enough to sustain a full-time living from?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just saying that earlier on. Like, boxing's the only sport in the world that I know of that there wouldn't be a show, there wouldn't be a sport, or there wouldn't be any sort of money generated from it without boxers putting in the hard work. And it's the only sport that the boxer's the only one that doesn't make money out of it, and everybody else does. And it's so corrupt and it's shocking. And I don't think people actually understand the kind of how it goes on. I think people see boxers and see, like, people see, oh, you've won that title and oh, you must be making a fortune. And my girlfriend's friend said to her the other day, like, oh, yous will be living pretty now. And I'm like, I don't think you actually know how much I actually made.
Yeah.
Because before this happened, I stopped working for 10 weeks. So I've been 10 weeks without a wage. Your manager gets a percentage, your trainer gets a percentage. And then when it gets really right down to it, what you're left with, is it really enough for 10 weeks? You're making more or less the same wage I'd go out and make for a 9-to-5 job for a month, you know. So,
well, when you really think about that as well, like, see, actually having to put that time in and do that, it puts more pressure on the actual thing. Like, it's not just a sport, it's not just like a thing you're doing, you know. Like, it probably would have a lot less behind it if you weren't having to, like, you're going into the fight being like, I've sacrificed 10 weeks of work for this, I need to win this fight.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, in terms of boxing and money and everything's to do with belts and promotion and things like that. So you know that if you get the belt, you'll get some more publicity.
Yeah, absolutely.
To at least open some more doors for bigger fights and things like that.
Absolutely. And it's like, it's like what you're saying, that I'm fighting for the 10 weeks. I'm training so hard for the 10 weeks for the 12 rounder. So I'm only fighting for 35 minutes and people are like, oh, all that money for 35 minutes. And you're like, it's no all that money for 35 minutes. It's all that money for 10 weeks at absolute suffering and sacrifice and graft. And then when it comes to the end of it, you're putting it all on the line to fight. And like you say, like, if you win the belt, you get more money, you get more promotion, you get more exposure. And that's right. But you also have in the back of your mind, like, the way my contract works is I've got a 4-fight deal. So if I lose one of these fights, I don't get the same amount of money that I would have got. So you've got that in the back of your mind that you need to win this fight to keep getting money. If you don't win this fight, you're getting paid crap. So,
because you're 8-0 now, aren't you? So
that's me 8-0, yeah.
That, I feel like in boxing, having an O record is really important in a lot of ways. Like, in terms of actually the way people see you. It's like, oh, he's not lost a fight, he's got a fight. So with each fight you win, do you feel more pressure going into it?
Not really. It's like, I've always been in the mindset, like, the O thing was like a pure Floyd Mayweather thing. Like, Floyd Mayweather was the best, he never lost, he never done this, never done that. And realistically, that's not going to be achieved because it's just, there's so many good fighters, there's so much different factors to it. You could go in and just have a really bad night and that is how it is. But I never think like, oh, I'm scared of losing my O or anything. I just want to be in the big fights, and there's nothing better than being in the big fights. So if I went into a big 50-50 fight and I lost, that's not a loss to me. It's a learning experience, and also it shows that you're not just in the game. There'll be so many people that will fight, dumplings all the way through and be 30, but they've never ever fought anyone. I'd rather be 10-0 or 10-1 or 11-1, and my good fight was an absolute barnstormer, classic fight. So
yeah, because those are the ones people remember.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter whether you win or lose, as long as you're in the fights, and you look at the domestic scene in the UK, and everybody's more or less taking a loss because they're all fighting people at their level, at their weights, and it's just how it's happened. And it happened because of COVID's stopped people flying over, so you had to fight in your own country, so.
And you're obviously all savages, so it's...
Aye, we're all just battering each other.
Exactly, like, because you mentioned Mayweather there, but do you not think that the standard of boxing as a whole seems to have gotten better?
Absolutely, aye, 100%.
Because he was able to, back then it seemed like you were able to sort of manipulate the fights the way you wanted them to be. We all know that Pacquiao fight should have been 5 years before it took place. Do you know what I mean? So, and you're talking about guys taking the easy route, like, somebody like Tommy Fury, for example, you're like, who is this guy fighting?
Aye, exactly. And it's so common. People don't want to fight hard fights. And, there's people that are like, why would you take hard fights? Because they're probably getting paid the same amount or more than the average boxer for fighting dumplings. So it makes no sense for them to take a hard fight and challenge themselves. Whereas for people like me, I need to start taking hard fights and get my name out there to be making that kind of money or to be making that kind of standard, So
it's risk and reward, isn't it?
Exactly.
You need to take that risk to get your name out there, and hopefully it goes to plan.
Exactly. Hopefully it pays off.
Which is why it's such a crazy sport in a lot of ways, because you never know, one punch can change the whole direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did you take anything from like Josh Taylor winning the undisputed title? He obviously had won that big fight, and that was a bit of the way that he won it was really impressive, and I feel like it put a lot of attention on British boxing.
Yeah, absolutely.
As a whole. And
it's like I'm familiar with Josh, Joe Senior, Joe Junior. Joe went to the Commonwealth Games with Josh twice, so like they know each other really well. So we're quite tight with Josh, and I don't know him as great personally. I've just seen him about at events, but what he's done is absolutely phenomenal, and there's really only a handful of people that have done that ever. So for me, like, I'm under no like illusions. Like, Josh is a really, really, really special, talented fighter. The chances of somebody getting undisputed again in Scotland's like slim, but I don't see myself not being a world champion. And the route that they went through it and done it is kind of where I see myself going. So what he's brought to British boxing and Scottish boxing's phenomenal. It's actually quite sad that because he's Scottish, I don't think that he actually got the exposure he deserved and the recognition on his achievement. And I think that's quite a big thing in Scotland. Scottish sports, not just boxing, just in general, we're always overshadowed. So
that's a really good point, because that was for in terms of boxing, that's worldwide news, but you never really, in terms of Sky Sports and things like that, if he was English, you do think that there would be a lot more coverage?
Absolutely. It's shocking. It's absolutely shocking, because Sky Sports never covered it. BT never covered it. It was so difficult to try and watch it in the States. And then when he won it, nobody back here really cared or really presented it. And I think if that was your AJ or your Fury or any of the English guys, then it would have been the most talked about thing ever. And like, if you're an undisputed world champion, everyone should know your name. But I can guarantee if you went out in the street and said to somebody, do you know Anthony Joshua, they'd say yes. Do you know Tyson Fury, they'd say yes. If you said, do you know Josh Taylor? Lots of people probably don't know who Josh Taylor is, and it's shocking.
It's interesting though, because I don't really know how we break down that barrier in terms of actually, because it's a case of you really need to be the elite, and also on top of that have some sort of crazy persona. It's not just like, if you look at McGregor, for example,
yeah,
he didn't really have a long run in the UFC. It was all just kind of, he wins a fight and he cuts a promo.
Yeah.
And then he wins another fight and he cuts a bigger promo, and it just builds up to this thing.
Aye.
So it seems like we're living in an age where the hard work and the quality isn't enough. You also need to have that
unique selling point.
Yes.
And that's what McGregor's got. He's got a unique selling point. He's got this persona. if you met McGregor before the UFC, it probably wasn't the way he was, and now he figured out what worked to get him to the position he's in. Same as Tyson Fury, he does his singing, he does his dancing, he's got his extra bits.
Yeah.
Same as Anthony Joshua, he's this good guy, and he's like, they're your household names that have got the extra bits, whereas the elite still don't cut it unless they've got that extra something. So
it's so strange because if you're Josh Taylor, you're thinking, what else can I do here? What do you need to do? So I've seen him start kind of chatting more shit, so to speak, and you can see that kind of coming in more into it because he's obviously in a position where you're like yourself as well, like even just coming up with something like the Nightmare, it's eye catching, and that's what you need to do. You need to be able to just be outlandish. It's part of the business of it, really.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why we came up with the Nightmare stuff, the mask, the coming in with the cool ring wear and stuff, and it's like you'll always remember from a show the guy that came in with the mask. You'll always remember, and anybody watching that on TV will remember. You don't remember the other 9 people that were fighting on that show, but you'll remember the guy with the mask, and that was the whole point behind it. And it's you do always need to find a unique selling point, I would say.
See, talking about money and talking about guys like McGregor and all that, it made me wonder, like, see the way that you work and the sacrifice you put in. Do you think that would change as you become like a millionaire? Because you've seen someone like him, talk very working class and talk very like, he wants to make a difference and he wants to, support his family and these things that you would expect, and that's sort of the go-to things you would expect to hear from someone from that background. But as it's went on, you've kind of seen this development of little less humble,
and a lot more scumbag.
Exactly.
I think like the problem with McGregor is, or the problem with money is, it shows who you actually are rather than. There's a lot of people who say, listen, when I get money, I'll do this and I'll do that and I'll do this and I'll do that. And they've got actually a picture in their head of what they would actually do if they had money. And now he's got money, like the true McGregor comes out, like he's a scumbag and he's just, all he cares about is himself. And that's fine, because nobody's saying if you've got a lot of money, you need to do this and that and help somebody or help your family or do this or do that. But if you're saying it, then you should be doing it. Whereas you're saying it and then you're going off and...
Well, it sounds like we need to book this. Nathaniel Collins, let's get it booked.
If he can get that booked, I'll smash him to bits. He's shite at boxing.
There we go. That's getting clipped.
Good, get it up there.
He's actually, because we're doing that charity event that I'm doing with Enzo. They're doing another one in December that he's agreed to take part in a wheelchair boxing fight.
Good.
So
get my wheelchair sorted out and I'll smash him to bits.
if he needs an opponent, I'll give you a shout. That would be interesting to see.
Aye, absolutely.
He may as well give the rub to somebody. You know what I mean? But I think Steve was he's angling for the fight, but I don't think he could. Steve Timothy is the guy that's organising the event, and he actually came on this, and so did Enzo. And what's funny is Enzo was talking about wanting one more fight, and now I'm going to be that fight.
Yeah, that fight.
Which is kind of mental. I mean, let's say you had 4 weeks to go for the fight, right? And you hadn't really prepared the way you wanted to, right? What would your advice be for those 4 weeks? Just double sessions and graft?
Yeah, just work as hard as you can in the 4 weeks. That's all you can do.
Somebody needs to kill me for 4 weeks, basically, and I'll be like crawling into the ring. So.
Work as hard as you can, and then work a wee bit more.
Honestly, like it's funny just because I'm listening to you talk about how much work you put in, and I'm thinking, what am I doing here? But yeah,
it's not always the case. But as long as you've got that in your mind that I'll be fine here, it's good. And I think that's the mindset about anything. Like, I could wake up and not have trained for a year, but if I wake up and I feel like doing something and in your head, you're prepared to go for it, then that's all that matters. It's all just about strong mindset.
Well, that's interesting because even you're doing the 10 week kind of camp and having to go through that, I would assume that there's an element of struggle with your mind in a way, like having to keep going and being like that sacrifice that we spoke about. But is there any points where you're thinking that, like, you're having to overcome that struggle mentally and say to yourself, I need to just get up and get this done?
Absolutely. You know? Like the whole 10 weeks, like the 10 weeks, I don't care what boxer you speak to or whoever you speak to, and if they tell you they enjoy a camp or if they've had a pure great camp and it's no problems about it, they're talking shit, because that 10 weeks or the 8 weeks or the 6 weeks, whatever space of time you're dedicating to fully putting that effort in, that's not going to be a nice 6, 10, 8 weeks, because you're drained. You've got so much going on. You've got the mental pressure of concentrating in the fight, ignoring, I had so much time to, like I was saying earlier, I missed all the sun, I missed birthdays, I missed my girlfriend's birthday, I'm missing family members' birthdays, I'm missing all sorts of events. That takes its toll on you mentally as well, where you're like, what am I doing here? And then on top of that, you're not eating as much as you would normally eat, you're not drinking as much as normally. On top of that, you've got people saying, can you meet me here for tickets? Can you do this? Can you do that? And then you're just, all that builds up on you, and by the end of the 8 or 10 weeks, you're ready to kill something.
I mean, that's, in a way, that's probably why the training and the physical element of it is so important. Otherwise, you would just be all over the shop mentally.
Like, absolutely.
Because when you're talking about that, the thing that stands out to me is all the other. It's not just a case of you're going into training and going home. I think people have this idea of it's easy to get fit when you've got the boxers and the training and all that kind of thing. And I think they have this idea that it's all set up for you to just go in, do the work, go home and live your normal life. When in actuality, there's a lot of, behind the scenes sacrifice of every day going in and having to push through and miss these things all through summer. And I think that there's a big part of that for young boxers, especially that haven't quite made it yet for that recognition that people don't understand.
It's such a common misconception, and for me, this is like the main point. Like, people day to day don't really know what happens. They see what you post on Instagram, the nice stuff, like, oh, I'm going out a run, oh, I'm solid, blah blah blah. You get to the end and then you have your fight and everybody's celebrating. They don't see, like, getting up at 4:30, how tired you are, you've not had anything to eat, you're absolutely drained, and then you come home, then you need to go out again, then you come home, then you need to go out again, all while you're dealing with everybody kind of giving you, shit, like, can you come meet me for tickets? Can you give me tickets here? Can you give me tickets here? Can you do this interview? Can you do that? Can you do... And, like, for me, like, that's overwhelming, because not that I'm not used to it, just I don't cope well with it. So on my camp, it's like a shut off. Don't talk to me. Don't bother me at all. And I'll leave everything to the last minute. Like, all I care about is myself when it's time to train. And I think people struggle with that a lot.
Well, I think that's the right kind of approach, because you end up actually prepared for the fight. But now for a lot of young fighters with social media and the you get Instagram and all these things where you're wanting to give it the right idea of what you're doing, but I think a lot of fighters get caught up in the perception of it rather than what they're actually putting
stuff,
in.
And it's such a big problem now. Like, I love Instagram as much as the next person. Post on Instagram all the time, but I never let that come in front of the work. Like, you don't post that you're doing the work but not actually do the work. It's, you get it done, then talk about it, get it done, then talk about it. Whereas a lot of the younger guys coming through the now are like, look at me doing this and that, but it's the other stuff that's doing around that's not really, doesn't count, and it doesn't happen, and that's a problem. And
because it seems like there's a lot of, like, trying to be don't put the persona first as well, because as much as we're saying, like, so Josh Taylor's not getting the recognition, he's in a place now where he's got the opportunity to at least try and create that. Whereas a lot of people are trying to create a false personality first, before actually putting in the work of being a good fighter.
Oh, definitely. Like, people these days are like, oh, look at me, I've made it, or I'm training so hard, or I am a lot of people just like the pro boxer status now, rather than the actual job of, you're a pro boxer, you should be acting like a professional, working like a professional, fighting like a professional, and being a role model. Like, people just like to go, oh, look at me, I'm a pro boxer, I do this, I do that. And it's more of a thing to impress people rather than an actual, this is what I love to do and I'm doing it for a specific reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, So let's talk about your team. We've spoken about Regan, but you've got a whole team there. And how did that all start for you in terms of your journey in boxing?
So I was boxing for a club called Bellhouston when I was probably about 14, 15. And we were at the Scottish Championships one year, and Joe Ham Senior had left Renfrew Boxing Club to create his own boxing club, Hayfield. So at Hayfield, he had Stephen Lavelle, who was Commonwealth Games bronze medalist. He had Stuart Bart and he had Joe Junior. And that year, the three of them all won the Scottish senior title. And I seen them that year, and I was like, that's where I need to be in that team, because every one of them became a champion that year. So I instantly was like, that's where I need to be. He's producing champions. And I messaged Joe on Facebook, I think, and I says, listen, can I come to the club? And I do a bit of boxing, but can I come and train with you guys? He says, come along, bring your stuff, bring your sparring gear. And I was like, bring my sparring gear? No way am I going to get made to spar first night at this club. So I went in, I swear to God, Joe Senior, right, get your sparring gear on, everyone's sparring tonight. So I was like, right, I'll get my sparring gear on. Joe Junior smashed me to bits. Jack Turner smashed me to bits. And I just get punched about, and I came out and I was like, wow, these guys are so good, that's amazing. Like, and then that happened for like 3, 4, 5 months. So I was just getting smashed every other night, and then one night I never get smashed, and I was like, I'm getting good, I'm improving, and that's how that came about. So and then we just went from strength to strength with that. Like, me and Joe, we won the Western Districts, won the Scottish Championships as a senior. I went to the Commonwealth Games, and all while this was happening, like, young Joe went to the Glasgow Games, Steph went to the Glasgow Games and he won a bronze. Stuart was winning the senior titles, and then when all them turned pro, it was just a different mentality altogether. Like, me and Regan were still amateur, they were all pro, but we were training hard. So it was like that was kind of the dream team at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it shows you how important the environment is to be around the right people, and how, like, going through that sort of battling can create the right mentality to have a champion.
For sure, yeah. And they were all champions. I'd never won nothing. I was, like, God's honest truth, at that point I was shit at boxing, like, and I thought in my head I was really good, and I wasn't. I was terrible. And I went to Joe and he was like, listen, stick at it, blah blah blah. I was in there sparring, hard work all the time, and sometimes I'd leave training and be crying and stuff, like, and that was the reality of it. It was just real. It's that hard that, it put me in. But now I'm in good stead, and I'm in that mindset, like, I'm a champion, and there's nothing that can change that.
Do you think that there's a lot of, like, in terms of that actual period of time where you're having to push through not being good at it and going through the beatings, like, now, do you think there could be more people that are, that will push aside than before, because of the idea of the work ethic seems to be less valued than maybe it was back in the day, if you know what I mean? So the idea of having to go in and take a beating isn't really something that, most boxing gyms would tell young fighters now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't think loads of people are encouraged. Like, there's so many people I know that don't even spar, that just do a bit of boxing training, and the moment it's getting hard, they're like, I don't want to know anymore. And that's out with the sparring. There's been people that have came to us when we were all pros, and it's been the same thing. Like, Joe put people in with us and we'll spar, and if they can't hack it, they don't come back. And it's been the same over all the years since even I got good, and people would turn up and Joe would be like, go in and show them what you're about. Doesn't matter the level, doesn't matter nothing, because if you can't handle it then, you'll never be able to handle it. And it's character building. It's like, if you can't handle that then, because even 10 years ago when that first happened to me to now, the possibility is now that I'm going to go into a pro fight and I could get in serious, danger, or somebody could hurt me, and I've got the mentality now that, well, I've been hurt. I was hurt for 5 months. I was battered for 5 months, and I never quit then, and I'm not going to quit now. Whereas if you quit then, come back to it and fight, the chances are you're going to quit there in a fight. So
Yeah, you understand what it means to be hit in the face. You know, that's a big part of it. A lot of people can talk about it and train hard, but if you can't take a punch, you're going to show you to be a good boxer.
exactly, it's the main thing, isn't it? So if you can't take a punch, you're going to quit.
Exactly. I mean, that's going to be my problem, I think.
Aye, you can just go like this, but
I feel like I'm the equivalent of that guy that hits the pads a couple of times. He's like, I could probably win a world title. Man. Oh man, I'm so cliche. But talking about sparring though, it seems like there's been a lot of a debate about how much sparring is good and how much of it's not efficient. In the sense of, there's a lot of people that are having their best fights in the gym and not when it matters. Yeah. So how do you find that balance between, I need to spar because I want to be sharp, but also I don't want to do damage to myself before the actual fight takes place?
It's difficult because my favourite part of training is sparring, and we spar all the time. And I mean, for that fight there, I probably done over 100 rounds easily, because I was training for months. So, and I was travelling, we travelled to Bolton, Manchester, everywhere. And when I was going away, I was doing 10 rounders, 12 rounders. I was doing 10 and 12 rounders in the gym with heavier guys. And for some people would be like, oh, you shouldn't do that. But I love sparring. It's the best part of training. You're only going to learn from sparring. So why would you not? But there is a big debate on, there's lots of camps now that only do a certain amount of sparring. I've seen Carol Frampton talking about it. He only does 40 rounds or 60 rounds in a whole 3 months camp. Or I've seen a lot of people talking about body sparring because they don't want it to affect their health, getting hit in the head long term. But why in this sport? Why it's one of the ones, you're in boxing, you know what I mean? So if you're worried about your health, you're in the wrong sport, aren't you? So I guess it's just self-preference. I
think there's a couple of ways to look at it, in the sense of, one is that having the right partners to know that let's have a good sparring session, but let's not knock each other out here, because that's not worthwhile. We're trying to learn and improve. Definitely. And we want to push each other, but if you get your bell rung 2 weeks before you fight for the title, it could affect fighting for the belt, Oh, absolutely. So it's how, in terms of concussions, that's never really been a thought in your head of been worried about that, or you just always went for it?
It's never been a problem for me, and touch wood that it never happens, but I've never been hurt to say I've never been hit and seen stars. I've never been hit and wobbled. I've never been dropped or dizzy, or never even been hurt with a body shot. And I don't know if it's just I've got a good chin or I've got a good mindset, or it's just I won't allow that to happen. But it's never happened. Again, touch wood that it never does happen. But yeah, there's people in the gym that will get hurt, and there's people in the gym that will get knocked out. There's people in the gym that can get dropped. So if you're one of the people in the gym and that's happening to you, when you obviously don't want that happening a week or two before you're fighting, or 3 weeks before you're fighting for a title, or so.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that the actual weight division you're in matters with that? Because, for example, if you were a heavyweight, you wouldn't want to be sparring all the time, in the sense of that would probably make a bigger difference if you get hit with the bigger punches.
I suppose, yeah.
Does it give you a bit more freedom to actually say, we can go for this, but also be smart enough to not hurt each other?
I suppose our in-house sparring, I spar with Joe, Reagan, I was sparring with Elliot, a new pro Elliot. Sometimes we'll spar with Stuart, but our in-house sparring's really controlled and clever. It's about finding the right things to do and being technical. Yeah, it's about the skill. And then very occasionally it'll get heated, and then that's fine every once in a while. But our big spars, when we go away and we're sparring at other clubs or we're sparring in other cities, then that's when it's kind of you're there to be technical. It's almost a fight. I sparred a few people who are at my weight, at featherweight in the UK. So when I'm away sparring them, I'm thinking this is a fight. I need to let you know I'm better than you. And if we are fighting, I want you to have the fear of God in you before we fought, because you remember the spar was hard, the spar was tricky. So what's going to happen in the fight? So it's the different kinds of sparring, I guess.
Do you not think that in boxing you can need that bit of insanity, but in a way? Like you're talking about what Josh Taylor done, wanting to emulate something like that. But to even be in the sport of boxing, you kind of have to have that bit in you that's a bit crazy and wants to be in those situations where you're going after it. Like when you look at in general life, the amount of people that struggle just to maintain a diet, maintain a regular workout routine, and then you're thinking, I'm going to, not only am I going to do this, but I'm going to do it as a living and then knock somebody's head off. Do you know what I mean?
I suppose like you definitely need a certain, you definitely need to be a certain type of person. There's no two ways about it. Like if you're doing boxing, you definitely got some issues. Maybe not some issues, but you're definitely a certain way. I wouldn't encourage my kid to get into boxing in a million years, because I just know how hard it is. Not that it ruined my childhood or ruined my teenage years going into my adult years, but like I never done nothing. I never went to parties, I never drank, I never done anything. Like all the processes that you go through growing up and having friends. Like, I never had friends. I never had nothing to do. Like I had associates or people I'd do things with, but all of them were away. At school, everybody was out partying. I wasn't. At college, uni, everyone was out partying. I wasn't. And it's just like, I would never encourage somebody to get into it just because it was so hard.
Now that is a really interesting point to make when you think about how early you got into boxing. So what at what point did you start going out? When you got into it very early, what actually got you going to the gym in the first place?
So I've got a big cousin, Ryan Collins, his name is, and I seen him fight in, I think it was the British Championships. My mum and dad took me along to see him. Like my dad was really into boxing, so they loved going to see. So they took me along. I was probably about 13, 14, and I wasn't really into sports as a kid. I was just into like running about, climbing trees. I liked kicking a ball, but I wasn't into sport. I was more into like the Xbox, so I was starting to get a wee bit chubby. So my mum and dad were like, right, do you want to try out the boxing as well? You've seen Ryan doing it. Like, it's good fun. I think you'll enjoy it. And I went down to the club. I did enjoy it. I really liked it. Once we had our first spar, my nose kept getting burst, and my papa was like, right, he's going to chuck it. He won't stick it. And it wasn't. I was like addicted to it. I loved the feeling, and I loved this is pure amazing, like a proper adrenaline rush. And from there, I just was hooked. And even though I got into it early, it was kind of, I got into it myself. Like I found my own way. Yeah. In boxing.
In a way, it's better to be addicted to that than going out in clubs and bars and stuff.
Absolutely. Because it depends on what you look at it.
Because you can get addicted to a lot of worse stuff than boxing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. But do you think that actually living that life so early on, did that affect you in terms of socially? Like in terms of, because you hear a lot of people talking about social anxiety and things like that. Yeah. Is it weird to then go from being that locked in to then try to go in and out? It's kind of, how do you even have a conversation when you're so isolated?
I mean, I'm fortunate, like my family don't really drink. Like my family are outgoing people. So what was strange for me was Scotland's got such a big drinking culture and such a big party culture that every single person I know drinks and likes nights out. When I go on a night out, I'll go out on a night out completely sober, and I've done it all through for 18 to, now even, and I can have a dance and I can have a chat, and people are like, you must be steaming, you're this, you're that, and I'm like, I'm not touched a drink all night, like I'm completely sober, I've just got a personality, whereas Scotland's got such a big mentality, like you need to have a drink to have a good time, you need to have a drink to show your proper personality, and you're like, it's not really the case.
I think one of the biggest points you have to make about this is a lot of the culture is you need to have a drink to feel good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what you're saying is that you already felt good without the drink because you had a life that was very structured and very worked out well, like in terms of the way your mind was and how you wanted to live your life. Yeah. So you were living the life that you wanted to live, which meant that you didn't have to turn to booze or whatever else. Yeah. And I think there's a big thing to be said for people that, in terms of our culture, think that they need to drink and they need to whatever to feel something.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a shame. I've got friends and I've lost friends along the way because of how their lifestyle is. I've got friends that I've been friends with them for years, and we've done sports, we've done every sport, and then they get into a bit of drinking, and then suddenly they're drinking every weekend and doing whatever else, and you lose a connection with somebody, because I don't want to surround myself with people drinking every single weekend, people doing drugs, people doing whatever they're getting up to. Like, now for me, I'm like, I've already avoided that my whole life. Why would I continue to be around that? Now I'm a champion. So if you're getting drunk and doing this and doing that, and you start fighting or get caught doing drugs, and I'm with you, I'm going to get tarred with that brush, even though I've never been involved in it. And it's like, I'm now much more aware of when I was younger. I would be around everybody that was drunk. I'd be out at the parties. I'm not drinking, but I'd be there. Or I'd be out clubbing, and people were fighting, and whatever happened, if you get involved in anything, all that happened. And at the time I was naive, and I was like, who cares? It's just a bit of a laugh, you're young. Whereas now I'm much more switched on to, that's not the people I need in my life. The people I need in my life is the guys in the gym that are focused on where they're going and what they're going to achieve. Like, I need people with ambition moving forward, not people that are trying to hold on to me and drag me down. So,
and that, there's a lot to be said for protecting your circle and who is around you. Because you see good people get sucked in with bad groups, and that's obviously, to have that mindset of how, what you just said there is a very disciplined way of looking at it. Also, your life, you've clearly had a very disciplined way of thinking about it. Who was the main person for you that was like helping, like an inspiration, so to speak, to help you actually have that mindset of being as disciplined as you were from an early age to now?
I think like my mum and dad obviously had their influence on that, and my mum's always been a good judge of character in terms of, just watch with this person, just watch with that person. Exactly. Like, if your mum's saying something, they know. But I've always had that myself. Like, I'm very big on like motivational quotes, motivational videos. I watch a lot of stuff myself, and I see a lot of stuff myself, and I've been very driven to keep that mindset, because it's so easy to get sucked in, and especially in Scotland. It makes me sad to say it. I love Glasgow and I love the city, and I feel like it's the worst place for anybody trying to achieve anything, because as soon as you start to achieve, people want to bring you back to their level, or they want to hate, or they want to stop you from going further. And it's sad, because it's one of the only places that you can feel so welcome, but yet feel so brought down as well. So
I think that's really well put. Like, having ambition is very frowned upon in Glasgow. The idea that you want to be more, you want to break out of the box, but it's like, no, why don't you just come out and have a drink instead?
Exactly. It's like all through my teenage years and stuff, and people were saying, "What do you mean you're not drinking? Mm-hmm. What do you mean you don't want to do that? What do you mean, like, what's wrong with you?" And like, how is it a bad thing that I don't want to do that? How is that a bad thing? And like, it's just such a bad mentality, and it's something that they'll never break away from. And people, because of where we live, unfortunately, that's just
I mean, I think that a lot of that is why we're seeing such a rise in, like I said, depression and anxiety, and obviously there's a bunch of reasons, but the actual culture of promoting these things that are really bad for you, and it's not a healthy lifestyle, and you're not, but it's the norm. It's like, if you don't go for a pint after work every day, you're not living a normal life.
It's crazy. And it's like what you just said there, that is why depression, anxiety, suicide even's rising. Like, I know people who finish on a Friday, go out Friday night into the Saturday, come home, go out Saturday all day into Sunday, come home, even sometimes go out on the Sunday, then you're back to work on Monday, and you're rough for 3 days, and then when you recover on the Thursday, you start the process on the Friday, and then you're wondering, why am I feeling like shit? Why am I feeling terrible? Like, my life's so shit, I've got nothing, and blah blah blah. And it's like, you're doing that to yourself. There's millions of things you could be doing. You live in Scotland, there's mountains you could be climbing every weekend, there's places you can be visiting every weekend. Like, there's absolutely no need to be doing what you're doing, but you do it anyway, and it's a shame.
I mean, that seems to come from, you're totally right, but I think that comes from a lack of education and a lack of talking about it. It's like, for our generation that we're in, I think actually spreading the message of, you don't need to do that. that isn't, as much as the culture, that is what the culture is now, but we have the ability to change that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a shame because young people don't recognize it enough. Like young people don't speak about it enough, and I think that's to do with being scared of being excluded from your peers. Because if you're in a group of 5 people and they want to drink, and you're the 6th, and you're saying, "Listen, you don't need to drink. We could go bowling, pool, go ape. We can go anywhere," and people are like, "Who are you? What are you talking about?" Like.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
we don't want to hang about with you anymore because we want to go and drink. And I think that scares a lot of people to be left out of the circle if they speak up on that. And fortunately, I don't care. I don't care if I've got no pals. Don't care if have to be myself forever. But like other people do worry about like being alone, and
Yeah,
it's a shame.
but you're a great example of that, of how you can actually spend the time working on yourself, and you don't need to have people around you to feel good about yourself. That's, there's a big idea, it seems to be, that you need to have people, company, to feel good about you.
Yeah.
When that's, nobody else can make you happy, truly. And you're a great example of showing people that you can live a life in a way that doesn't have to be anyone else's life. It can be the way that you want it to be.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't need to be through boxing or sport. Like, I do stuff all the time. I would do anything myself that makes me happy. Like I said before, hill walking, camping, fishing. Like, you can do anything, and you don't necessarily need to be dedicated to sport to have another goal. But like in business or anything, like if you've got an end goal or something to work towards, an ambition, then that's a great distraction from everything else, like everyday life. And you sometimes you just do need that bit of a push and something in you to get you on that way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't have that goal. I think that seems to be, it's just a constant, work from Monday to Friday, then you're out. And that's like you said before. But see, when we were talking about your whole journey and how much of it was just you focusing on what you were doing and staying away from all that. Let's give you a body shout out here then. So where does that come into it? Like, actually, you've been together for quite a while. So
yeah. So she loves Conor Ben and Victoria Ben, and she's always watching Conor Ben stuff on Instagram and all that. And he gets up at 4 a.m. and blah blah blah. So this camp round, she was like, right, listen, you need a lifestyle change. You just, because I was training all the time, but I wasn't in camp. And when I'm training, I'll sleep till 10, 11, 12, let's say, and then I'll go a run. And she's like, no, you need to get up at 4. You need to get up at 3:30. We'll go a run. She would come out and cycle on the bike with me while I'm running. Then we'll go back to bed. Then we'd go back to bed. And then we'd get back up. And then we'd maybe go up to the gym and do like a light session, a swim, whatever. Then I'd go to the boxing gym. She'd go home. And then I'd come back and she'd get dinner. So when I say you don't need people, it's great to have somebody like that in your life as long as they're on the same page as you. And it's hard because I say you don't need people. You do. Everybody needs somebody, and like whether that be your parents, because my mum and dad are so helpful, or whether that be like if you have a few friends that are on your level, it's great. Like as much as I love being myself and doing my own thing and I motivate myself, I love being around people as long as it's the right people. And everybody loves being around their friends and everybody loves being around the right group. It's just choosing the right ones.
Definitely. I mean, that sounds like she's pretty dedicated to your mission, man.
Yeah. she's another one. She's a number one fan. So she always loved MMA, UFC. Like her and her brother used to go to the grip house and stuff and do their own thing. So that was before I met her and we were together. And she still loves UFC more than boxing. So if there's something on in America and it's UFC and boxing's on in America and we're both staying up, the UFC's going on and I've not got a say in that. But she loves it. I say she loves it. The camp's hard for her because I've got loads of washing, and then I'm walking about miserable and she needs to deal with that. But I mean, hats off to her. She done what she needed to do to help me through it, and in return, hopefully I can pay her back eventually. So,
well, you've made a good start.
I know, I've made a good start. Well, that's it. She got I got her stuff for her birthday when we were in camp, and then I promised her a wee camping holiday. We got the camping holiday out of the way, and we've just bought a house, so
Nice.
hopefully we're going to move into that in the next 4 or 5 weeks. So once that's all sorted, then it'll be my focus will be on her and getting everything how she wants it until the next camp comes about.
Well, I mean, how did you meet? That's got to be a good question, surely.
It's funny actually. So we went to school, high school. I moved to our school in about third year, and we never really spoke, or she didn't really like me, and I don't blame her. I was annoying me shite at high school. So, but years
in high school,
still, but don't tell anybody. Let them figure that out for themselves. But when we left school, went our separate ways, and then a year ago, I've been doing it for like a year and a half. I was working with one of my friends, Mitch, who he was doing a homeless initiative, and I'd just started my business. So I had like 30 odd clients doing boot camp, and what had happened was me and Mitch kind of got talking, and I was like, listen, I'll get everybody to bring stuff and donate. So we got a good big truck full of donations basically from my boot campers. He got a van and stuff sorted, and we went out in Glasgow city centre, just under the Central Bridge.
Yeah.
And it was World Suicide Prevention Day, and we done like a big homeless day. Basically gave out all sorts of clothes, food. Nando's sponsored it and stuff. So we done a big event, and then from that event, me and him decided, listen, we'll just do it every Tuesday. So he was already doing every Tuesday at one of the other bridges, and I said, listen, I'll come on board, we'll do every Tuesday and we'll make it the best we can. And Dia, it was funny because I just became good friends with Dia, and he was cutting hair for the homeless, we were providing the clothes, Mitch was providing the food and stuff, and eventually it ended up really big. We got KFC on board, we got loads of places on board, and we were the only people doing it through lockdown because everyone was kind of scared to go out. And we just had a good wee group. So eventually my girlfriend, she was running 10k every Monday, Wednesday, Friday for who was it? Whatever homeless charity it was, she was running.
That's amazing.
10k every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So she messaged me, she's like, I'm doing this, but I want to be more hands-on, like actually involved instead of just donating money all the time. So she came to that, and I was like, come along. And it's funny because when she came along, I had COVID. So I'd missed her for the first few weeks. And then I started doing some work for Royston Youth Action Charity. And because she was in the group chat, she was like, I'll come along to that. So she came along to that. That's when we first kind of got reconnected after school.
That's amazing.
I know, it's just such a weird story. And then after that, we just kind of clicked, and we started going out together, and it's good. It's been great ever since.
So basically, you're modern day saints, is what you're trying to say.
Yeah, we're the perfect people. No, everyone's got their own flaws and stuff. But
but what a way to that is not. When I asked that question, I didn't think it would
end up like that.
What a story that is, man.
Yeah,
it's just like of all the ways to meet somebody and reconnect with them, for it to be helping homeless people through all that, it's quite incredible.
I'd always believe like you do good stuff and you give good energy to the world, and it'll be reciprocated. And I've always felt like I've been a good person. I've always felt like I've been kind, and I've done as much as I can do for people, and I've got really like a nature where I want to help people. But I feel like I've had a hard few years as well, but now everything's starting to fall into place for me, which is good. And I would say it's not because I'm not helping people because I expect stuff back, but
it just happens.
It's happened, yeah. It's happened. I'm getting a house. I've got my title. Like everything's falling into place. I'm with my girlfriend, and all the good energy I feel like I've given into the world is now coming back full circle, and hopefully it continues. And I'll be able to inspire people to do similar. And I'll always continue to help. And as long
absolutely
as I can.
brilliant, mate. I couldn't agree more as well. Like that is very true. When you give out, you get what you give out, and that is you've clearly reaped the rewards of that, and it sounds like you really deserve it. Mm. So let's talk about who's next on the chopping block.
On the hit list. Well,
some dream fights for you? What are the fights you're looking at?
I'm not too sure what's going to happen now. I mean, I've only been scheduled a 12 rounder once. That was my first 12 rounder, and it only lasted 3. So I've actually only ever been 6 rounds. So ideally, I'd like to defend the title and do another few 12 rounders, just hopefully to get some experience over the rounds before we go into massive fights. Again, I'm only 8 fights in, I'm still learning, but ideally, I'd like to push on for the British, which is now vacant. And if I couldn't push on to that, I'd like to move to the European or whatever kind of level gets me world title contention first. But like I said earlier on in the show, there was the featherweight division stacked right now. So, I mean, I've won that Commonwealth title. That title should put you in top 5, never mind top 10. And I'm still number 11 in the rankings. So it's like, that's how many good fighters there is there. Like, I can't even break into top 10. I've won this title because it's rated on a point system, and above me is like the previous British champion, the previous world champion, the previous European champion. All these guys have got all these points in front of me, you know. So
I mean, that it sounds like you've got a lot. You see, the thing is though, you sound prepared for what's ahead.
Absolutely.
I think even winning a belt like that, a lot of people might think, you know, I'm going to jump ahead and go too quick with certain things, but you're already thinking about the things you need to do to actually be better for these big fights.
Yeah.
'Cause you don't want to just be in the big fights, you want to win the big fights.
Absolutely. 100%. You want to win the big fights. And if you're going into a big fight ill prepared, there's people already at my level, like domestically in the UK, there's like people I've already sparred with who have fought 12 rounders, and they're about my level. So that's kind of the people who have fights. They've already had 12 round wars, whereas I'm already now. I wouldn't change it. I like going in and knocking people out in 3 rounds. It's good. It's an easy night's work. But if you're going in with that attitude to a 12 round fight with somebody who's there for the 12 rounds, it's going to be a disadvantage to you.
It's just a very grounded way to look at it. You know, a lot of people could get carried away, and you're obviously very focused. And I'm, you know, from my point of view, I'm very motivated even just from this conversation.
Yeah.
Because, you know, God knows I've been a bit lazy recently. So it helps to hear how you know, you can live that kind of life and you build the rewards for it. And I can't, you know, congratulate you enough for it, man.
Thank you.
Well, this has been a lot of fun, man. And if there's anything you'd like to plug, Instagram or anything.
Yeah, so my Instagram's Nathaniel Collins. My Twitter's Nate Collins 60. I don't really use Twitter a lot. I honestly hate it. Worst social media ever. It seems to be that all the boxing people are on Twitter, and I'm just like, how do you work this? What is the point in it? You can only say 100 words or whatever. It's so bad.
It's very toxic for sure. But
I don't know why it gets used.
Social media just became this very important thing for the whole thing, isn't it? Really, like,
yeah.
You need to have it for people to know what you're doing.
Exactly. It's weird.
If I didn't have this, I wouldn't be on it at all. So
that's what I always say to everybody. I was like, if I never had boxing, I needed to promote myself, I wouldn't even have a phone probably. I hate it. Like, and it's so addictive. You spend 7-8 hours a day on your phone,
it's
and
mad, isn't it?
you can't get off it. And I'm like, oh man, people leave me alone. But secretly, you're like, I like scrolling through.
It becomes so normal, doesn't it? It just becomes part of your, and like you hate yourself for it, but you're also like, I can enjoy this. So
yeah. Like I've just somehow you've went to the toilet and wasted 2 hours, and you're like,
exactly.
I'm on it doing also. I'm play just crappy games and stuff. And you're like, why am I even doing this? I could be doing productive stuff.
Happens all the time, man. But this whole podcast, like all about ability, you actually sum it up really well with the way that you think about things and the way you work, because that's what essentially people always say to me, is it about disability? Is it a disability podcast? I wouldn't say it's strictly about that, because it's about people showing that you can be the best version of yourself, regardless of whatever your circumstances, and you're the epitome of that. So
absolutely. And I would say, like, as much as disability can hold you back in some regards, there's always a way to overcome every obstacle in some kind of sense. You know, as much as something could hold you back, you can definitely put your mind to overcoming it in some which way.
100%, and hopefully I can continue to show that. And,
Yeah, and bust Enzo Macronelli.
Oh, you wait and see, mate. He's got a knockout punch coming for him, mate. I'm going to go full cheer Southern with this.
Yeah.
So, Rick Flair in it, but just cut wrestling promos and he'll knock out in the first round. So,
Fingers crossed.
So this has been a pleasure, and hopefully you can help me a wee bit with the training. I need it. I definitely need it.
Absolutely. We'll need to get something
We need to
sorted
figure out how to
out.
land up knockout punch, man.
We need to get something sorted out.
But brilliant, man. I really enjoyed this, and I appreciate you making the time, man.
No, I appreciate you giving me your time. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a great buzz. I'm all right to just give a shout out to my sponsors before we go.
Of course,
off.
yeah.
I've got Knockout Meals, who are providing my food for my fight. I've got Live Mechanical CBD, and they were helping me with like muscle rub and joint rub. And Royston Youthy, they put in money to give me a help because I've been doing work with them. They're a great charity. Who else have I got? I've got HS Athletics that were doing some strength and conditioning work with me, and Micro Industries, who sorted out all my clothing and t-shirts. So yeah, they were all kind of part of the team that helped me.
I can say that they are all pretty cool sponsors, man. Like Knockout Meals are cool. I need to get something like that on the go.
Yeah,
man.
you need to get onto them. They're epic actually. Like they're good. They deliver all over the UK as well, because I always see people down London and stuff with Knockout Meals. And I'm like, yeah, how you even got that?
I'll say to what a sponsor of a podcast.
Aye. Say to them, the boy that does it as well used to box with us, Joe Ham. He boxed with for him, Lewis Benson. You ever heard of him?
Yeah, I've heard that name before.
Yeah, so he
hopefully I can bring it my abs for a change.
Aye. Get onto him and say.
No, I will do, mate. And aye. But no, that like I said, this has been really fun, and I hope you get more sponsors and more opportunities, and I'm sure everything will come to you as long as you keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much for having me.